Imagine standing in front of a federal judge trying to prove that you deserve to live and work in the United States.
Yeah, the pressure of that is just unimaginable.
Right. And the one piece of paper standing between you and immediate deportation is like a blood test proving you had the chicken pox in elementary school.
Wow. Yeah, it sounds absurd when you say it out loud.
It really does. But welcome to the deep dive.
Mhm.
We are constantly surrounded by these massive abstract debates about immigration.
Well, absolutely. It's always a political talking point.
Exactly. But today, we want to look past those political headlines. We're going to examine the actual granular bureaucratic reality of the system.
And we have the perfect way to do that.
We do. We're doing that by tracing a single case file with you today. The journey of a man named Corey Oscartes.
Right, because when you dig into his actual file, which spans from his arrival in 2010 to a judge's final signature in 2018, everything shifts.
You stop seeing that political talking point we mentioned, and you start seeing a person trapped in a massive, wildly contradictory legal labyrinth.
It really is a labyrinth.
So we've got the materials right here on the table. It's this fascinating stack of official U.S. immigration court documents, tax records, medical forms, identity paperwork.
It's quite a stack.
It really is. Okay, let's unpack this.
Well, a single case file like this acts as the perfect microcosm. Because, we talk about immigration as this abstract concept all the time.
Right, like it's just policy on a whiteboard.
Exactly. But these documents reveal the literal paper trail of a human life adapting to a super rigid legal structure.
It forces us to look at the cold mechanics of it all.
Yeah, how a person transitions from existing entirely outside a legal framework to being officially recognized by it. The sheer volume of documentation required to prove your own existence is staggering.
It's wild. And to really grasp the weight of that final court decision in 2018, we have to start with the life that was built before the courtroom doors ever opened.
We have to trace it back to the beginning.
Right. So, according to the entry records in this file, Corey arrived at JFK Airport on September 30th, 2010.
Coming in from Adana, Turkey.
Yep, on a B-2 visitor visa. And his authorized stay runs out exactly 1 year later in September 2011.
Which officially makes him an overstay.
Right. The system essentially marks his time as expired. But here's the thing. He doesn't just, vanish into a basement somewhere.
Far from it, actually.
The biographical forms in his file show a guy who is actively, heavily participating in the economy.
Yeah, from 2012 to 2013, he is managing a Domino's Pizza in Philadelphia.
Which is not exactly a job where you're hiding in the shadows.
No, not at all. Then he's working as a gutter installer in Baltimore, and eventually he becomes a driver for Lyft.
A Lyft driver. I mean, that is a highly visible job.
Exactly. He has interacted with the public, navigating city streets. He's essentially participating in the modern gig economy in broad daylight.
And the employment history isn't just something he, verbally claimed later to a judge. It is rigorously documented.
Heavily documented.
We have his actual 2016 tax forms from Lyft sitting right here.
Yeah.
And this is where the system starts to look completely absurd to me.
Oh, the tax records are fascinating.
He gets a 1099 MISC showing about $1,500, but then there's the 1099K.
Right, the form for payment card and third-party network transactions.
Yeah. For 2016, that form shows exactly $38,884.69 in gross payment.
That's a very specific, very real number.
And month by month, you can literally see the hustle. I mean, over 3,000 in March, almost 5,000 in November. That is serious full-time driving.
He's working hard.
Yeah, but it's like building a house on a fault line, right? You're fully participating, paying taxes, contributing, but legally, the ground could just split beneath you at any moment.
What's fascinating here is that paradox, right?
Yeah.
It's a foundational element of the U.S. bureaucratic machine.
How so?
Well, you have the IRS operating in a complete silo from DHS.
Oh, right.
The IRS philosophy is incredibly straightforward. If you earn income within the borders of the United States, you owe taxes on it, period.
Regardless of whether you have the legal right to work here.
Exactly. Regardless of your immigration status. They issue individual taxpayer identification numbers, they process the 1099s, and they just collect the revenue.
They don't care about your visa.
They actively encourage compliance from undocumented workers. It demonstrates a clear intent by the individual to be a contributing member of society.
Right. But DHS is a totally different story.
Yeah, DHS is tasked with enforcing the Immigration and Nationality Act. They consider that same person removable.
So you end up with a person who is structurally vital to the local economy, but completely vulnerable.
Vulnerable to deportation at any second.
It's a completely dual reality. I mean, you have an apartment in Nottingham, Maryland, you're paying your taxes, you're literally driving citizens to the airport.
But there's a limit to how far paying taxes gets you.
Exactly. The IRS might accept you, but DHS is still actively looking for you, and inevitably, those two realities collide.
The system wakes up,
Yeah, the fault line cracks. In January 2016, they found him.
and when the bureaucratic machinery engages, it moves with absolute procedural coldness.
We have a notice of hearing and removal proceedings right here, dated January 6th. It orders him to appear at the Baltimore Immigration Court in June of that year.
So that silent period of just grinding away at work, that's over.
It's totally over.
Once that notice of hearing is issued, the clock is ticking. And honestly, the psychological pressure must be immense.
They're officially in removal proceedings.
Right. The state has formally initiated the process of extracting you from the country. Navigating from that point forward requires legal strategy that most natural-born citizens would find utterly incomprehensible.
Which actually brings us to a sequence of documents that honestly stopped me in my tracks.
The attorney forms.
Yeah. So in June 2016, right around his scheduled hearing, we see an EOR 28 form logged in the file.
That's the official notice that an attorney is appearing on behalf of the respondent.
Right. So he secures a lawyer to represent him. Makes total sense. You are facing the might of the federal government. You hire a professional shield.
The very necessary shield, usually.
But then we jump forward to October 2017. He's at the Baltimore Field Office of U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, and he signs a waiver of attorney form.
He does.
Wait, hold on. I have to actively question this strategy. He gets a lawyer to stop his deportation, and then a year later signs a form expressly waiving his right to be represented.
Yes, that's exactly what the file shows.
Why would he intentionally fire his own legal shield? Is that the legal equivalent of attempting to perform surgery on yourself?
This raises an important question because on paper, it does look like bureaucratic suicide. Proceeding pro se, which means without a lawyer in an immigration context, is incredibly risky.
Because the laws are so complex.
Oh, notoriously convoluted. They say it's second only to the U.S. tax code in complexity. But you have to look at the mechanics of how these specific cases evolve over time.
Right.
This isn't just a single trial that happens in a week. It's a multi-year war of attrition.
Because we are looking at a timeline stretching from a 2016 notice to a final decision
I'm gonna keep saying.
in 2018.
Exactly. The legal billing for 2 years of active immigration defense, I mean, that would be catastrophic for a Lyft driver.
The financial pressure is just crushing.
It is. So immigrants sometimes waive counsel for specific field office interviews or intermediate steps because they simply cannot maintain an attorney on retainer indefinitely.
Okay, that makes sense practically. But isn't there a strategic layer here too?
There is.
Yeah.
If we look closely at the broader file, we see a critical pivot point. The biographical forms note that Correa was married on January 20th, 2015.
Right, in Tustin, Maryland.
Yes. So the file contains stamps indicating an I-130 petition, which is the form a U.S. citizen spouse files to establish 2015.
Right.
There is.
Yeah.
If we look closely at the broader file, we see a critical pivot point. The biographical forms note that Correa was married on January 20th, 2015.
Right.
January 20.
There is.
Yeah.
If we look closely at the broader file, we see a critical pivot point. The biographical forms note that Correa was married on January 20th, 2015.
Right.
Já vi. Aceita.
In Tustin, Maryland.
Yes. So the file contains stamps indicating an I-130 petition, which is the form a U.S. citizen spouse files to establish the relationship.
Ah, so this is a marriage-based adjustment of status kicking into gear.
Precisely. When an applicant has a straightforward, heavily documented marriage to a U.S. citizen, the pathway to adjusting their status becomes much more administrative.
Less like a courtroom battle.
Yeah, slightly less adversarial than, say, fighting an asylum claim from scratch. So by 2017, he might have felt the trajectory of the marriage-based adjustment was undeniable.
Meaning it was clear enough that he could navigate the field office interview alone.
Right, without paying an attorney just to sit next to him.
Still, it is a massive calculated gamble.
Oh, absolutely.
You are weighing the financial ruin of ongoing legal fees against the existential risk of making a single clerical error on a government form that gets you deported.
The pressure to execute this perfectly on your own is wild.
And the government standard for a perfect application isn't just about, proving your marriage is real or your taxes are paid.
Not at all. To actually win an adjustment of status, the burden of proof extends to your literal biology,
Yes. Here's where it gets really
the
interesting.
medical files.
Right. The U.S. government literally requires an examination of your biology. We have this massive dossier here, the Form I-693.
The report of medical examination and vaccination record.
Yeah. Completed in March 2018 at a Passport Health Clinic in Baltimore. It's so bizarrely intimate.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the I-693 is the physical manifestation of the United States enforcing its public health shield.
Meaning they're looking for diseases.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Historically, immigration law fixates on communicable diseases of public health significance.
Okay, so what's the underlying philosophy there?
It's quite stark, honestly. In the eyes of immigration law, an applicant is considered a potential public health risk until they scientifically prove otherwise.
Wow. So you are guilty of being a biological threat until your blood work clears your name.
Exactly. It perfectly illustrates the heavy burden of proof placed entirely on the immigrant's shoulders.
And they do not take your word for it. You can't just check a box saying, hey, I feel fine.
No, you need lab results.
Highly technical LabCorp reports. Attached to this I-693, they ran a quantiferon test.
For tuberculosis.
Right. They are literally incubating a sample of his blood to prove he doesn't have TB. And then there's the RPR test for syphilis.
And a NET test for gonorrhea.
It's wild.
The specific diseases targeted trace back to historical public health panics, really, but they remain rigidly codified today. If any of those tests come back positive, your path to legal status hits a massive roadblock.
Sometimes insurmountable. Thankfully for him, his tests are all negative.
But the testing isn't even the end of it. The vaccination records are just as intense.
The meticulous charting of vaccines, Tdap, MMR, the annual flu shot. And then there is the detail that gave us our hook for today's deep dive.
The varicella test.
Chickenpox. Because Corey didn't have a childhood medical record from Turkey proving he got the vaccine or had the illness, the government couldn't just assume he was immune.
They assume nothing.
So they made him draw blood for a specific lab titer test. We have the printout right here, Index 3621.
And the doctor literally had to handwrite a note on the bottom of the lab report.
Yeah, it says 31918. Patient is immune to varicella by titer.
A missing childhood record from decades ago in another country means you have to subject yourself to a modern lab draw today. Every single antibody has to be documented.
It's staggering. I mean, think about it. You're a guy who has been driving a Lyft around Baltimore for years, completely woven into the fabric of the city.
Very much a part of the local economy.
But to convince a judge you belong there, you need a signed government printout proving your immune system knows how to fight off a childhood rash.
It is a staggering amount of invisible labor just to reach the baseline of being considered acceptable.
Invisible labor is the perfect phrase for it.
It's the defining feature of the immigrant experience in this system. Years of living with the cognitive dissonance of being economically essential but legally discarded.
Followed by intense, microscopic scrutiny of your finances, your relationships, and your blood.
Which all eventually converges on a single desk.
Room 440 of the Baltimore Immigration Court.
Yes.
After 8 years of living in the U.S., the thousands of Lyft rides, the strategic risk of waiving an attorney, the blood draws, the titer tests, we reached the final document.
The culmination of the entire journey.
The order of the immigration judge, dated June 6, 2018, presided over by Judge Philip T. Williams.
This is where the machinery either crushes you or finally integrates you.
And looking at it, it's literally just a single, slightly crooked photocopy. But on this piece of cheap paper are the two most important pen marks of this man's life.
The check marks.
Yeah, the judge has checked the box granting a resolution to his removal proceedings, and right below it, he checked the box granting an adjustment of status under Section 245.
Which is huge.
So what does this all mean? Can you translate the legal weight of this single, hastily checked box? What shifts in the system the second that ink dries?
The metamorphosis is instantaneous. The moment the judge signs that order, the fault line we talked about earlier is permanently repaired.
Wow.
The entire weight of the Department of Homeland Security's removal effort is instantly neutralized.
So that 2016 notice of hearing
Resolved.
and the 2011 visa overstay.
Forgiven and overridden. By granting the adjustment under Section 245, this document marks his legal metamorphosis.
He transitions from a respondent fighting deportation to a recognized resident.
Exactly. A lawful, permanent resident of the United States. The labyrinth suddenly has an exit. He no longer has to prove his right to exist. The state has finally agreed that he does.
It is a monumental achievement, especially when you consider the sheer mountain of paperwork it took to secure it. It's the ultimate validation of a decade-long struggle.
It really is.
When you step back and summarize this whole journey for the listener, it makes you realize how easily you and I take our right to exist somewhere for granted.
Oh, we take it entirely for granted.
If you're born in a place, your belonging is just assumed. It requires no effort. You don't have to carry around a binder proving you aren't a threat.
Right. But for an immigrant, reaching that absolute baseline of legal requires an exhausting, intimidating gauntlet.
It demands total transparency from the applicant, while the system itself remains incredibly opaque and difficult to navigate.
And I think tracing a granular file like this leaves us with something quite profound to consider about how we measure human belonging. Well, we usually define our identities by our passions, our families, the communities we build, and our dreams.
Right, the human elements.
But to the state, your right to exist in a specific place is entirely devoid of romance or community. It is reduced to tax codes, background checks, and immune system titers.
Just data points on a form.
Exactly. It makes you wonder, how would your own life look if it were suddenly stripped down to a binder of forms? If you had to mathematically, financially, and biologically prove to a judge that you belong exactly where you are sitting right now.
That is a heavy, necessary thought to carry with you. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive as we bypass the political noise to examine the actual hidden machinery of a single life navigating U.S. immigration. Keep questioning what's on the page, and we'll catch you on the next deep dive.
Yeah, no, this is